The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched for miles in every direction. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the massive space. Some floated in the air with wings that sparkled like diamonds. Others crawled on many legs across the smooth floor. A few stood tall on two legs like trees, while some rolled around in metal balls. At the center of it all stood Supreme Chancellor Zixthon. His crystal body caught the light from 100 suns and threw rainbow colors across the walls. He was old, even by galactic standards. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched new species take their first steps into space. Today, he would make the most important announcement in 10,000 years. "Fellow beings of the galaxy," his voice rang out like music made of starlight. "We gather today because of a great threat. A species that refuses to follow our laws. A species that expands without asking permission. A species that shows no respect for our peaceful ways." The crowd grew quiet. Even the beings who made noise just by breathing stopped their sounds. Everyone knew what this meeting was about. Everyone knew which species had been causing problems. "The humans of the third planet of the Sol system," Chancellor Zixthon continued, "have been declared a Class 7 expansion threat. They must be stopped before they spread their chaos to other worlds." A being that looked like a giant squid raised one of its many arms. "Chancellor, what crimes have they committed? Where do I begin?" The Chancellor's crystal body flashed red with anger. "They refuse to join our council. They ignore our messages about proper expansion protocols. They build ships without asking for permits. They explore space without following our maps. Most shocking of all, they actually fight wars among themselves." Gasps echoed through the hall. Fighting among your own species was considered the worst possible behavior in galactic society. Most species had given up war millions of years ago. The idea that humans still fought each other was almost too horrible to believe. "But Chancellor," spoke a creature that looked like a walking flower, "surely they are just young. All species go through a violent phase. Perhaps we should wait and guide them gently." "We tried that approach for 50 Earth years," Zixthon replied. "We sent peaceful messages. We offered to teach them proper behavior. They ignored every attempt at communication. Some of their leaders even laughed at our offers to help." More gasps filled the air. Laughing at the Galactic Council was beyond rude. It was almost unthinkable. "Furthermore," the Chancellor continued, "our scouts report that humans have spread to other planets in their system. They did this without filling out proper forms or asking permission from any established authority. They simply decided to expand and did it." A serpent-like being with scales that shifted colors spoke up. "What do we know of their military strength?" "Very little, which makes them even more dangerous," Zixthon admitted. "They use primitive chemical rockets to move through space. Their weapons appear to be simple metal projectiles and explosive devices. They have not developed proper energy shields or plasma weapons. Yet somehow, they have managed to spread across multiple worlds in just a few hundred years." "Impressive for primitives," the serpent being hissed thoughtfully. "Too impressive," the Chancellor agreed. "This is why we must act now, before they develop more advanced technology. We have assembled the largest fleet in galactic history. 3,000 of our best warships will travel to their system and demand their surrender. If they refuse, we will show them the consequences of defying galactic law." The Great Hall erupted in discussion. Beings spoke in 100 different languages, creating a symphony of alien sounds. Some were excited about finally taking action. Others worried about the humans' unpredictable nature. A few questioned whether war was really necessary. Meanwhile, millions of miles away on a small blue planet, something very different was happening. The emergency session of the United Nations had been called at 3 a.m. Earth time. Representatives from every nation on the planet sat in the assembly hall in New York. Translation devices hummed as they processed the alien message that had arrived just hours before. Secretary General Maria Santos stood at the podium, holding a tablet with the translated message. Her face was serious as she began to read the formal declaration from the Galactic Council. The words spoke of humanity being a threat to galactic peace. They demanded immediate surrender and acceptance of alien rule. As she read, something strange happened. First, the representative from Brazil started to smile. Then the ambassador from Japan covered her mouth to hide a laugh. By the time Santos reached the part about humans being dangerously unpredictable, half the assembly was trying not to giggle. When she read the final demand for immediate cessation of all unauthorized expansion activities, someone in the back started laughing out loud. Within seconds, the entire assembly was roaring with laughter. "I'm sorry," Santos said, wiping tears from her eyes. "But did these aliens just threaten to invade Earth because we explored our own solar system without asking permission?" This set off another wave of laughter. The Russian ambassador was laughing so hard he fell off his chair. The representative from Kenya was beating the table with her fist while cackling. Even the usually serious German delegate was red-faced with mirth. Outside the UN building, news crews were trying to report on the alien ultimatum. But every time they mentioned that the aliens were upset about humans not following proper expansion protocols, the reporters started laughing too. Within an hour, the internet exploded. Memes about aliens being upset over paperwork filled social media. Videos of the UN assembly laughing went viral in minutes. Comedy shows across the world had enough material for months. The most popular meme showed a picture of Neil Armstrong on the moon with the caption, "Sorry, aliens, forgot to file the proper forms for this one." As night fell on Earth, the planet buzzed with excitement and laughter. Humans had just been threatened with invasion by a galaxy-spanning empire, and their response was to turn it into a joke. In space, alien scout ships detected the unusual activity on Earth. They reported back to the fleet commanders that humans seemed to be celebrating something. The aliens found this behavior very confusing. They had no idea that humanity's laughter was about to become the least of their problems. Admiral Vextar stood before the largest war room in galactic history. The chamber was built inside a massive asteroid that had been hollowed out and turned into a military base. Holographic displays showed star maps, ship positions, and detailed plans for the invasion of human space. Vextar himself was an impressive sight. He stood 12 feet tall, covered in thick armor-like skin that had turned silver with age. Forearms moved constantly as he pointed to different displays and made notes. His species, the hegemony, had been the galaxy's premier military force for over 50,000 years. "Attention! Fleet commanders!" His voice boomed through the chamber. "Today we review our battle plans for the human containment operation." Around him, hundreds of military leaders from dozens of species studied the displays. There were insect-like beings with multiple eyes that could see every detail, flying creatures with advanced tactical minds, even some artificial intelligences that existed as pure energy. "First, let us review what we know about human military capability," Vextar continued. He gestured to a display showing grainy images of human spacecraft. "As you can see, their technology is quite primitive. These vessels use chemical combustion for propulsion, no anti-gravity systems, no energy manipulation. They literally burn fuel to create thrust." A commander that looked like a walking crystal formation spoke up. "Admiral, how do they achieve interplanetary travel with such basic technology?" "Brute force and inefficiency," Vextar replied with obvious disdain. "They build massive rockets and throw them at their destinations. It takes them months to travel distances we cover in minutes. Our scouts report that some of their journeys require years of planning." Another commander, this one resembling a giant crab, clicked its claws thoughtfully. "What about their weapons?" "Even more primitive," Vextar said, switching to another display. "They fire solid metal projectiles using explosive propulsion. No energy beams, No plasma cannons, no quantum disruptors. They essentially throw sophisticated rocks at their enemies. Laughter rippled through the war room. The idea of using physical projectiles in combat seemed absurd to beings who had been using energy weapons for millennia. However, Vextar's tone became more serious. We must not underestimate them entirely. These humans show remarkable persistence and creativity in their primitive warfare. They have conflicts among themselves that last for years, or even decades. They show no fear of death and often fight against impossible odds. A serpent-like commander raised its head. Do we know why they fight so much among themselves? Our sociologists believe it is because they have not evolved beyond their primitive instincts, Vextar explained. Most species develop peaceful cooperation as they advance. Humans seem to thrive on conflict. This makes them unpredictable and potentially dangerous if they ever develop proper technology. The displays changed to show the assembled galactic fleet. 3,000 warships hung in space near the staging area. Each ship was a masterpiece of technology developed over thousands of years. They had shields that could deflect stellar radiation, weapons that could crack planets, faster-than-light engines that made interstellar travel routine. Our force represents the combined military might of 800 civilizations, Vextar announced proudly. The humans have perhaps a few dozen small ships scattered across their system. The numerical advantage alone should be enough to force their surrender. What if they refuse to surrender? Asked an artificial intelligence speaking through a robotic body. Then we demonstrate the consequences of defying galactic law, Vextar replied grimly. A few targeted strikes on their military installations should convince them. If necessary, we can disable their industrial capacity until they see reason. As the briefing continued, intelligence reports began coming in from scout ships near human space. The reports were confusing. Admiral, a communications officer called out, "We're receiving some unusual intelligence about human activities." "What kind of unusual?" Vextar asked. "Sir, they appear to be building large structures throughout their system. Our scouts initially thought these might be defensive installations." "What kind of defenses?" Vextar moved to study the new data. "That's the confusing part, Admiral. The structures don't match any known defensive patterns. They appear to be entertainment facilities." Silence fell over the war room. Entertainment facilities? In response to an invasion threat? "Explain," Vextar demanded. "The largest structures appear to be designed for large gatherings of humans. They have what look like viewing platforms, sound amplification systems, and facilities for food preparation. Some appear to be sports venues." A bird-like commander ruffled its feathers in confusion. "Are you saying the humans are building stadiums in preparation for war?" "It gets stranger, Admiral," the communications officer continued. "Human civilian traffic has increased dramatically. Instead of fleeing their system or hiding in bunkers, millions of humans are traveling between planets. Our analysis suggests they are planning some kind of celebration." Vextar stared at the intelligence reports. In 50,000 years of military experience, he had never encountered anything like this. Species threatened with invasion usually responded with fear, preparation for defense, or attempts at negotiation. Humans seemed to be throwing a party. "Perhaps they don't understand the seriousness of our ultimatum," suggested the Crystal Commander. "We sent the message in every human language," Vexitar replied. "The translation was perfect. They understand exactly what we told them." Meanwhile, back on Earth, humanity's response continued to baffle anyone trying to make sense of it. Instead of military mobilization, humans were doing what they did best when faced with the absurd. They turned it into entertainment. Last day of peace parties were being organized in every major city. Comedians were writing new material about alien bureaucrats. Movies studios were already planning films about the Great Galactic Misunderstanding. The orbital space around Earth was busier than it had ever been. Thousands of civilian ships were launching daily, heading for the outer planets where the best views of the coming confrontation would be available. Travel agencies were advertising front-row seats to first contact packages. Betting pools opened on everything from how long the alien ships would stay to whether they would ask for directions back home. The most popular bet was on how many times the aliens would demand to speak to Earth's manager. In the deeper reaches of the solar system, construction crews worked around the clock on mysterious projects. When asked what they were building, the workers just smiled and said, "You'll see." Scientists who had been quiet for decades suddenly became very active. They filed strange requests for materials and energy allocations. When questioned, they said they were working on demonstration projects. The most puzzling reports came from the asteroid belt, where massive amounts of rare metals were being moved to undisclosed locations. Cargo ships carried loads that would have powered entire cities, all heading for coordinates that weren't on any public star charts. Admiral Vextar studied these reports with growing unease. He had expected fear, panic, or at least proper military preparations. Instead, humans seemed to be treating the invasion threat as an opportunity for some kind of massive celebration. "Admiral," one of his advisors said quietly, "what if this is some kind of psychological warfare? Perhaps they hope to confuse us with their strange behavior." Vextar considered this possibility. "If so, it's working. I have no idea what they're planning." As the Galactic Fleet prepared for departure, one final intelligence report arrived that made everyone even more confused. Human children were asking their teachers to assign homework about proper first contact protocols and how to make aliens feel welcome. It seemed that while the galaxy's greatest military force prepared for war, humanity was preparing for a welcome party. The invasion fleet departed for human space, confident in their superior technology, but completely unprepared for what they would find there. The alien fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system with perfect precision. 3,000 warships materialized from the twisted space around them, their hulls gleaming in the light of the distant sun. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Judgment. Through the massive viewing screen, he could see the human solar system spread out before them. 9 planets orbited the yellow star, with the third planet being their target. Earth looked small and blue from this distance, hardly worth the massive effort they had put into this operation. "Scanning for human military forces," reported his tactical officer, a being with 6 eyes that could process multiple data streams at once. "Report," Vextar commanded. "Admiral, this is unusual. We're detecting thousands of human vessels throughout the system, but they don't appear to be in any kind of defensive formation." "Explain." "They're scattered in loose groups around different planets. No defensive positioning. No patrol routes. They appear to be floating randomly." Vextar frowned. "Are they trying to hide their military strength by disguising warships as civilian craft?" "Sir, our scans indicate these are civilian vessels, passenger ships, cargo haulers, even what appear to be recreational craft. Some of them are broadcasting entertainment signals." "Entertainment signals?" "Music, Admiral. They're playing music." This was getting stranger by the minute. Vextar had invaded dozens of systems in his long career, but he had never encountered anything like this. Usually, when a massive fleet appeared at the edge of a system, the locals either fled in terror or prepared desperate defenses. They certainly didn't throw what appeared to be a party. "Open communications," Vextar ordered. "All frequencies. I want to speak to whoever is in charge of this system." The communications officer worked for several minutes trying to establish contact. "Admiral, we're receiving multiple responses. Hundreds of them, actually." "Are they all from the same command authority?" "No, sir. They appear to be from individual ship captains, space stations, and even some residential areas on the planets. Many of them are asking if we need directions or assistance with anything. Vextar's four arms crossed in frustration. Are they mocking us? It doesn't appear so, Admiral. They seem genuinely helpful. One captain from something called the Luna City Retirement Cruise is offering to share their coordinates for the best viewing locations. Viewing locations for what? They didn't specify, sir. Before Vextar could respond, his communications officer perked up. Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission. It's coming from a space station orbiting the fourth planet. Put it through. The main screen flickered, and suddenly Vextar found himself looking at a tiny elderly human female. She had gray hair, kind eyes, and wore what appeared to be a colorful knitted sweater. She was sitting in what looked like a comfortable chair, with other elderly humans visible in the background. "Hello there, dear," the human said in a warm, grandmotherly voice. "I'm Margaret Chen from the Luna City Retirement Home. We've set up a lovely viewing station here on Mars, and we wanted to thank you for traveling such a long way to visit us." Vextar stared at the screen. In all his years of military service, he had never been addressed so casually by someone he was about to invade. "Human female," he began in his most authoritative voice. "I am Admiral Vextar of the Galactic Hegemony. You are hereby ordered to surrender immediately or face the consequences of defying galactic law." "Oh my," Grandma Chen said, adjusting what appeared to be reading glasses. "That does sound serious. But I'm afraid you'll have to wait a little bit, dear. We're just about to start the demonstration, and it would be rude to interrupt now that everyone's here." "Demonstration?" Vextar's voice rose dangerously. "What demonstration?" "Well, since you came all this way to see what we humans are capable of, we thought we'd put on a proper show. It's the least we could do for such distinguished visitors." Before Vextar could respond, his sensor officer spoke up urgently. "Admiral, we're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the system." "What kind of energy buildups?" "Unknown, sir. The readings don't match any known weapon signatures in our database. The energy sources appear to be distributed across multiple planets and artificial structures." On the screen, Grandma Chen smiled sweetly. "I do hope you brought proper eye protection, dears. It's going to get quite bright." Vextar felt a chill run down his spine. "Human, what are you planning?" "Oh, nothing threatening," she assured him. "Just a little demonstration of what humans do when we get excited about science. You see, when you announced your visit, our scientists were absolutely thrilled. It's been ages since they've had an excuse to test some of their more creative projects." "Admiral," the sensor officer's voice was tense, "the energy readings are increasing exponentially. Whatever they're charging up, it's bigger than anything in our database." "How much bigger?" "Sir, if these readings are accurate, they're approaching stellar-level energy outputs." "That's impossible. No species has the technology to harness that much power." On the screen, Grandma Chen chuckled. "You might be surprised, dear. Humans are very good at solving impossible problems when we put our minds to it." Suddenly, the space around the human vessels began to change. Lights appeared throughout the system, not the harsh glare of weapons, but something that looked almost festive. Colors danced between the planets like aurora displays on a galactic scale. "Admiral," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving audio transmissions from human vessels throughout the system. They appear to be playing music." "What kind of music?" "All kinds, sir. Classical, electronic, something they call heavy metal, and dozens of other categories. Some ships are playing what appears to be ceremonial music, while others are broadcasting what can only be described as party songs. The music filled the void of space, carried by radio waves that painted the electromagnetic spectrum with human creativity. Some of it was beautiful and haunting, while other pieces were energetic and powerful. A few ships seemed to be playing music specifically chosen to be as loud and dramatic as possible. "This is insane," muttered the tactical officer. They're treating our invasion fleet like a concert audience. Vexitar watched in growing confusion as the human celebration continued to unfold around them. Fireworks began exploding in the space between planets. Actual fireworks launched from civilian ships for the apparent purpose of making pretty lights. "Admiral?" Grandma Chen's voice came through the speakers again. "I do hope you're comfortable out there. We have some lovely refreshment stations set up if any of your people would like to visit. The chocolate chip cookies are fresh from the oven." Refreshment stations? Vextar could barely process what he was hearing. "Of course, dear. It's only polite. You've come such a long way, and we humans believe in being good hosts. There's even a tour group from Jupiter that's prepared to show you around the system if you're interested." As if to prove her point, a small human vessel approached the alien fleet. Its hull was painted in bright colors, and it was broadcasting what appeared to be tourist information about local points of interest. "Admiral," the sensor officer's voice cracked with stress, "the energy buildup is reaching critical levels. Whatever they're planning to demonstrate, it's about to begin." Vextar looked around his bridge at the confusion on his officers' faces. They had prepared for battle, negotiations, or even surrender. They had not prepared for humans to treat their invasion fleet like honored guests at a science fair. "All ships, maintain defensive positions," he ordered, though he wasn't sure what they were supposed to be defending against. "And somebody figure out what these humans are actually doing." As the energy readings continued to climb, Vextar began to suspect that the galaxy's understanding of humanity was about to change in ways they couldn't possibly imagine. The demonstration was about to begin. The demonstration began with something that looked almost innocent. Small lights appeared around Earth, twinkling like stars. Admiral Vexitar watched through his ship's sensors as the lights grew brighter and began to move in patterns. "Admiral," his sensor officer called out, voice filled with confusion. "Those aren't lights. They're controlled gravitational fields." "That's impossible," Vextar replied automatically. "Gravitational manipulation requires technology that even we haven't fully mastered." "Sir, the readings are unmistakable. The humans are creating and directing gravity wells with precision we've never seen before." As the alien fleet watched, the lights around Earth began to dance. They moved in complex patterns that painted pictures across the darkness of space. Flowers bloomed in 3 dimensions made of pure gravitational force. Stars appeared and exploded in miniature, their light bending around artificial black holes no larger than pinheads. "This is just the beginning," came Grandma Chen's cheerful voice over the communications channel. "The children always like to start with the pretty displays before the grown-ups show off." "Children?" Vextar's voice cracked slightly. "Those gravitational manipulations are being performed by children?" "Oh yes, dear. It's a basic science project in our schools. Little Timmy over there on Europa made that lovely rose pattern. He's only 8 years old." The alien tactical officer's mandibles clicked nervously. "Admiral, if their children can manipulate gravity for art projects, what can their adults do?" They were about to find out. The space around Mars suddenly lit up with what looked like massive construction equipment. But as Vextar's sensors analyzed the readings, he realized these weren't machines building anything. They were taking apart the planet's smaller moon and rebuilding it into geometric shapes. "What are they doing to that celestial body?" the navigation officer asked. "They're demonstrating precision matter manipulation," the sensor officer replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're rebuilding a moon the way we might arrange furniture." The reformed moon began to spin, its new crystalline structure catching and reflecting the light of the sun into patterns that spelled out messages in dozens of galactic languages. The primary message, written in letters hundreds of miles tall, simply said, "Welcome to the neighborhood." "Admiral," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving detailed technical specifications about how they accomplish that feat. They're sharing the technology freely." Why would they do that? According to the accompanying message, they want to be helpful. They think we might be interested in learning new techniques. Vextar felt his world view beginning to crumble. The humans weren't just showing off advanced technology. They were casually sharing secrets that could revolutionize galactic civilization. And they were doing it the way one might share a cooking recipe. The demonstration continued to escalate. Around Jupiter, the gas giant's great red spot suddenly changed color. Then it changed shape. Then it began displaying what appeared to be a holographic movie about Earth's history, projected into the planet's atmosphere using techniques that made no scientific sense. How are they manipulating weather patterns on a gas giant? The tactical officer asked. I don't know, the sensor officer admitted. Our computers can't even process what we're seeing. They appear to be using the planet's magnetic field as a three-dimensional display screen. But the real shock came when the asteroid belt began to move. Thousands of space rocks that had been floating in the same orbits for millions of years suddenly began repositioning themselves. They moved with purpose and precision, guided by invisible forces. Within minutes, they had arranged themselves into a massive structure that stretched across millions of miles of space. What is that? Vextar demanded. It appears to be a musical instrument, Admiral. A what? A musical instrument. They've turned the entire asteroid belt into what their databases call an organ. They're using gravitational resonance to create sound waves that can be heard across interplanetary distances. As if to prove the point, music began to emanate from the restructured asteroid belt. But this wasn't the simple radio transmissions they had been hearing before. This was music that touched the very fabric of space, creating harmonies that resonated through the hulls of their ships and into the bones of every alien aboard. The song was beautiful beyond description. It told the story of a young species reaching out to touch the stars, of dreams and hopes and the joy of discovery. It spoke of a people who saw the universe not as something to be conquered, but as a playground to be explored. Admiral? Grandma Chen's voice came through the speakers again. I hope you're enjoying the performance so far, but we're just getting warmed up. Warmed up? Vextar's voice was barely a whisper. Oh yes, dear. The real demonstration is about to begin. You see, when we heard that you were concerned about our expansion activities, we thought we'd show you what human expansion really looks like. The sun began to change. At first, it was subtle. The star's light shifted slightly, becoming more focused and directed. Then patterns appeared on its surface, dark lines that formed symbols and equations visible to anyone with the right sensors. They're writing on the surface of their star, the sensor officer said in disbelief. That's not possible, Vextar protested. No one can control stellar plasma with that kind of precision. According to the technical data they're broadcasting, the communications officer reported, they've built a network of magnetic field generators around their sun. They're using controlled fusion reactions to create what they call stellar calligraphy. The equations appearing on the sun's surface were beyond anything in galactic databases. They showed solutions to problems that had puzzled scientists for thousands of years, new forms of mathematics that opened possibilities no one had even imagined. But even this wasn't the end. The space around the alien fleet began to ripple. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist as massive energies built up throughout the solar system. Every human installation, every modified planet, every reconstructed asteroid was contributing to something that defied all known physics. Admiral, the sensor officer's voice was filled with awe and terror. They're not just manipulating matter and energy. They're manipulating space and time itself. How is that possible? I don't know, sir. But according to these readings, they're creating localized alterations in the fundamental constants of physics. They're rewriting the rules of reality within their solar system. Through the view screen, Vextar could see the impossible. space folded like paper, creating shortcuts between planets that reduced travel time to seconds. Time dilation fields appeared around different areas, making some regions experience hours while others experienced minutes. Artificial dimensions opened like doorways, revealing spaces that existed between the normal 3 dimensions of reality. "And now for the grand finale," Grandma Chen announced cheerfully. The sun pulsed once, twice, and then erupted in a display of controlled energy that reached across the solar system. But this wasn't destruction. This was creation. The solar array that humans had built throughout their system activated as one, focusing the star's energy into a beam that shot out toward the edge of the galaxy. The beam carried a message, not in radio waves or gravitational pulses, but in modifications to the quantum foam that made up the foundation of reality itself. It was a message that would be readable by any sufficiently advanced civilization, written in the language of physics itself. The message was simple. "Hello, we're ready to play now." As the demonstration reached its crescendo, Admiral Vextar finally understood why the humans had been laughing. They hadn't been mocking the Galactic Fleet's military might. They had been genuinely amused by the misunderstanding. The galaxy had sent its greatest fleet to threaten a species that could rewrite the laws of physics for fun. "Admiral," his tactical officer said quietly, "I recommend we request permission to open diplomatic negotiations." For the first time in 50,000 years of military service, Admiral Vextar agreed that retreat was the better part of valor. The humans were still playing their impossible music, the asteroid belt singing songs that touched the soul, while the sun wrote poetry in plasma across the sky. And somewhere in the back of his mind, Vextar began to wonder what other surprises humanity had been keeping to themselves. The alien fleet hung in space like confused children who had wandered into a room full of adults. Admiral Vextar stared at his sensor displays, trying to process what he had witnessed. His ships, the pride of galactic military might, suddenly felt like toys compared to what humanity had just demonstrated. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a formal diplomatic transmission. It's coming from Earth directly." "Put it through," Vextar replied, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. The main screen flickered and displayed a simple room with comfortable furniture. A human woman sat behind a wooden desk, wearing what appeared to be formal clothing. She was middle-aged, with kind eyes, and a gentle smile that somehow made Vextar feel like a student called to the principal's office. "Good afternoon, Admiral Vextar," she said pleasantly. "I'm Ambassador Sarah Martinez, speaking on behalf of humanity. I hope you enjoyed our little demonstration." "Little demonstration?" Vexatar's voice cracked. "You reorganized matter at the quantum level and rewrote local space-time. You call that little?" Ambassador Martinez chuckled softly. "I suppose it might seem impressive if you're not used to it. We do get a bit enthusiastic when we have an audience. Would you like to sit down? You look rather shaken." We... Vextar struggled to find words. "How long have you possessed such technology?" "Oh, quite a while now," Martinez replied casually. "We solved faster-than-light travel about 60 years ago, but it turned out to be rather boring once we figured it out. Dimensional manipulation took us another 20 years, but that became routine too. These days, our students learn quantum engineering in high school." "60 years?" the tactical officer whispered. "They've had FTL for 60 years? If I may ask," Vextar said carefully, "why did you let us believe you were technologically primitive?" Ambassador Martinez leaned back in her chair. "Well, that's a bit of a long story. You see, Admiral, we've been aware of galactic civilization for quite some time. We've been watching, learning, and trying to understand how things work out here." "Watching us?" "Of course. How else would we learn proper diplomatic protocols? We intercepted your communications, studied your cultures, and observed your various civilizations from a distance. We wanted to understand what we were dealing with before making contact. She gestured to something off-screen, and the display changed to show what appeared to be detailed files on hundreds of alien species. We have extensive databases on every member of the Galactic Council. Your histories, your technologies, your social structures. We've been very thorough. Vexitar felt a chill run down his spine. How long have you been watching us? Since about the time we achieved nuclear fusion, Martinez replied. That was roughly 200 years ago. We detected your communications networks pretty quickly after that. 200 years, the sensor officer breathed. They've been studying us for 200 years. But why? Vextar demanded. Why hide your capabilities? Why pretend to be primitive? Ambassador Martinez's expression grew more serious. Because we didn't want to frighten you. You see, Admiral, we studied your history very carefully. Your species, and most others in the galaxy, developed slowly over millions of years. You had time to mature socially before developing dangerous technologies. You learned wisdom before gaining power. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Humans are different. We went from discovering fire to splitting atoms in just a few thousand years. We developed interstellar travel within decades of leaving our planet. We solve problems not with patience and careful study, but with creative desperation and reckless experimentation. That sounds dangerous, Vextar admitted. Extremely dangerous, Martinez agreed. Do you know what humans do when faced with an impossible problem? We don't accept that it's impossible. We keep trying new approaches until something works. Usually something that everyone else thought was too crazy to attempt. The display changed again, showing historical footage of human achievements. Vexitar watched in fascination as humans built impossible structures, survived in deadly environments, and solved problems through sheer stubbornness. When we realized how energetic our approach to technology was compared to yours, we decided it would be better to keep a low profile, Martinez continued. We didn't want to accidentally destabilize galactic civilization just by showing up. Destabilize. Admiral, what do you think would happen if we offered to share our technology freely? If we taught everyone how to manipulate matter at the quantum level or reshape space-time for convenience? Vextar thought about it. Civilizations that had taken millions of years to develop their current technology suddenly gaining access to power beyond their understanding. Wars would break out. Ancient rivalries would erupt into conflicts that could destroy star systems. You would have chaos, he said quietly. Exactly. So we decided to play the role of primitive newcomers while we figured out how to introduce ourselves properly. We thought we had more time to work out the details. But then we declared war on you. Yes, Martinez smiled. That was quite a surprise. We spent days trying to figure out what we had done wrong. Then we realized that you were upset because we had been exploring our own solar system without asking permission. She started laughing again, the same warm laughter that had confused the aliens from the beginning. Do you understand how funny that sounds to a species that has been traveling between dimensions for decades? You were angry at us for not filing proper paperwork to visit our own moon. Vextar felt his face flush with embarrassment. When she put it that way, the Galactic Council's ultimatum did sound rather silly. But why reveal yourselves now? He asked. Why show us what you can really do? Ambassador Martinez's expression became serious again. Because it's time, Admiral. You see, we haven't just been hiding from galactic civilization, we've been protecting it. Protecting it from what? The display changed to show star charts of regions beyond the galactic rim, dark spaces where no civilizations existed, where even radio signals seemed to disappear into nothing. There are things out there, Admiral. Things that make human technology look like children's toys. We've been monitoring the edges of the galaxy for decades, keeping watch for threats that could end everything we've all built. Vextar stared at the charts. What kind of threats? The kind that consume entire galaxies for fuel, Martinez replied quietly. The kind that treat civilizations like ants to be stepped on. We've been preparing defenses, building safeguards, creating weapons and shields that could protect everyone if the need arose. You've been defending the galaxy without anyone knowing? Someone had to, she said simply. You've all been focused on internal politics and peaceful development. That's wonderful, and we wouldn't want to change that. But someone needed to keep watch for external dangers. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans hadn't been ignoring galactic civilization or disrespecting galactic law. They had been serving as invisible guardians, protecting everyone while staying hidden in the shadows. So what happens now? Vextar asked. Now we work together openly, Martinez replied. We'll continue our protective duties, but we'll also help advance galactic technology at a pace that won't cause chaos. We'll share our knowledge gradually, teaching others to understand what they're learning before they gain the power to misuse it. She smiled again. And we'll try to be better about filing proper paperwork when we want to visit new star systems. Despite everything, Vextar found himself chuckling at that. I think we can be more flexible about expansion permits. Excellent. Oh, and Admiral? Your fleet is welcome to stay for our victory celebration. We're planning fireworks that should be visible from the next galaxy over. As the transmission ended, Vextar looked around his bridge at his crew. They had come here to conquer primitives and found themselves face to face with guardian angels who could rewrite reality for entertainment. Admiral, his tactical officer said quietly, what do we tell the Galactic Council? Vextar thought for a long moment. We tell them the truth. We tell them that humanity isn't a threat to be contained. They're the reason the rest of us are still alive. Outside the ship's viewports, human vessels continued their celebration. Children played games with gravitational fields while their parents discussed plans for defending the galaxy from threats that hadn't even been imagined yet. And somewhere in the distance, humanity's real work continued. Silent watchers monitoring the darkness beyond the stars, ready to stand guard over a galaxy full of younger species who could sleep peacefully, never knowing that someone was keeping the monsters at bay. The war that was declared with such ceremony had ended not with conquest, but with the revelation that the galaxy's children had grown up under the protection of hidden guardians who asked for nothing more than the chance to keep everyone safe. Admiral Vextar ordered his fleet to stand down and requested permission to join the celebration. After all, it wasn't every day you discovered that the universe was a much safer place than you had ever imagined.